Today on Chris Dyer's Creative Friends.
That flow state condition that for me, being an artist is what I'm wholeheartedly devoted to.
Yeah.
I see a byproduct of that condition is a fluidity of reality and a more streamlined, serendipitous synchronization of just optimal reality. What's going on here? How did you access this? I can't tell you how many times I've encountered variations of that for me just give me this feeling like there's another level of orchestration behind this, that by just succumbing to the flow state condition as a priority, that there's another dimension of intelligence that inserts itself to just guide the process, to be uplifting and beneficial to the collective life experience. That's really what it's about. It's not about personal acquirement and gain and boosting yourself up. It's how can I make this the coolest experience for everyone around me, and to be a cosmic cheerleader for others' experience. Like that's
I love that.
the reward.
That's so beautiful.
I had no reference for Texas. I mean, my only reference was Oregon eclipse. So I'm just like,
which was
I'm going to be
nice.
running into everybody I know every 50 feet. You know, I got to be there. How could I miss it? This is the moment of a lifetime. So yeah, I let some of the people know. One of the guys was like, oh, well, I got to get to the Mazatlan airport at this hour. I was like, that's perfect. That's when my flight is. That's great. How auspicious, incredible. So I set the alarm, and then I wake up with the alarm, look at my phone. The guy's like, not going to the airport. I was like, I had no other backup plan, and I'm like in this farmhouse. I don't know anybody. I'm banging on doors. No one speaks English, and I'm just like, where am I? Like, how do I get out of here? And like people trying to get on taxi lines, no answers. I'm just like, fuck, did I just lose this chance? I already paid for my flight. But that was all I did, was pay for the flight, no other arrangements. So then some guy shows up, and I'm like, take me to the nearest town. So drives me to this town, get in a taxi, spend some stupid amount of money to get to the airport. I'm like the last person on the flight. And then Hans Haverin was like, you're gonna be in Austin, I'll hook you up with my buddy Manny, he'll like arrange everything. I was like, great. I land, he picks me up at the airport, he's like, what do you need? Let's get you a SIM card, let's go get you food, let's go get you camping gear, let's get this, let's get that.
Hans Haverin was in Texas?
Well, he's from Texas, but he hooked me up with his friend.
Ah, gotcha.
So yeah, so as soon as I landed, it was just like, here's the golden road of synchronous perfection all arranged for you, and it got me to Texas. And then first order of business, vibrationally adapt to this environment, not knowing anything about how enormous this thing was, and that I wouldn't see anybody I knew because it was so huge. And then the next morning canceled. I was like, wow, what a crazy trip.
Well, we're a different generation. Back when we did Oregon in Eclipse in 2017, not that we're passé or old, but like there's just like a lot of new people coming through, a lot of new, like even the trends of art and music change throughout the years. And we're still there holding our space.
My enthusiasm for certain things has lessened. Of like the novelty of this amazing thing that I'm well aware of by now. I'm cool if I miss it. I'm all good.
Right, but also we're like, I don't want to use the O word, but we're less young, and we're okay wherever we're at, and we're not chasing a scene or popularity points or gotta be there because of the Joneses. It's just like, oh, it'd be nice to see my friends.
Yeah, and it's a good thing you're never missing out on anything ever. Especially if you're enjoying the moment.
So do you ever get FOMO at all?
Well, I was feeling it pretty bad for Texas. That's why I had to get there.
Nice. Well, I was happy to see you there. Thank you so much, Luke, for joining me in my backyard here in St. Pete, Florida. Like, what
pleasure.
brings you out here to this little neck of the woods?
Well, through my girlfriend Amber's family connection was leading me here, and through our mutual friend Chris Palehorse. That just been in communication with him for years, so that was another point on the map. And then finding out you're here.
Yeah, beautiful. You're repping
cool.
his hat. Do you think you'll see him on this visit?
I did message him. He said he's pretty busy in these next windows.
Busy these
but
days.
yeah, it'd be really cool.
Yeah.
To connect.
No,
we did connect with him before we went to Costa Rica a few months back, and yeah, so that was we went to the Dali Museum.
Okay, nice.
Which is really, I'm so happy to see that. That was
yeah,
so cool.
right. That's kind of why well, there's a lot of reasons why I moved here, but to have a Dali museum 10 minutes away from where I live, like that's like,
it's a good barometer of the level of appreciation and
appreciation for psychedelic culture. It's like, oh, if he's accepted, maybe I can be accepted. Or, you know, I can do my thing here and be weird if they appreciate this other weird guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a really great connection with Dolly after the Venosa workshop in Catechese.
Yeah, tell us about that, because most people don't know about that workshop in the year 2003. Yeah. With Venosa.
Yeah, it was.
As we were talking before, people don't know too much about, but
which
he's
is a shame, because
huge visionary legend.
He was a pace car of psychedelic visionary phenomena that really set the stage for all of us and really deserves the accolades of the highest order.
Yeah, but totally. He started doing art in his 40s too.
Yeah.
That's so crazy when I'm showing people his book. This guy started in his 40s.
I know, incredible.
And it's like, whoa, how do you get so good so good? I guess you got some really good teachers, huh?
Yeah, there was a handful of artists that I got. Well, I had known Roman Villagrano and Carrie Thompson prior to that, but there was a benevolent benefactor that was supporting me, and those artists as well, that really just saw our potential and wanted to see us progress. And so he funded us to go there.
Was that Jay?
No, his name's Jody.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he funded us to go and upgrade our skill set, which was incredible. It was a missing link in my creative expression that I didn't know I needed until I got it and realized how vitally important it was to be able to more accurately express what I was destined to express. And yeah, so it was a very close integration into Dolly's world and his entourage and people that were close with him. And, you know, prior to that moment, Dolly was such a mythical, archetypal being. Like, how could this actually be a real person? You know, it was just like, yeah, just so beyond imagination that this was his life and his personality, and his creative output was so hard to imagine. And then meeting all these people that were in his inner circle, that lived close to him and went through his parties, and it just turned him into so much more of a mythical character after hearing the first-hand accounts.
It didn't humanize him?
I think it just amplified just his over-the-topness, that it wasn't just a front or an act, it was like his authentic personality.
Do you think Dali was truly that crazy, or was he putting on a persona to have more cachet for his art?
Well, I don't know, I can't say that. Just
we'll never know, I suppose.
Yeah, but just hearing the outrageous stories of his lifestyle and the parties that he'd throw, and just all these.
He was unique and special, regardless of
just unapologetically over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an incredible quantum leap of personal development as an artist.
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I wish I would have made it to that Catechese mission with the old school visionaries. I only really made the scene or got incorporated into the whole visionary world like a couple years after. And I was already hearing how you guys went to Spain to Dali is great and all. I love Dali. I'm here for Dali. But me, I'm a Matty Clark Wayne kind of fan.
Oh my God, yeah. I have a funny story about Matty Clark Wayne.
Tell me.
I've had this experience a few times with people, the artists that I've greatly admired and had the intention that one day I'll meet these people. So I don't know if it's like a weird karma, or it's maybe it's karma that's no longer applicable anymore. But Matty was always one that, I had all those album covers. I had Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, and Santana Abraxas, and Zonked, all of those album covers, and they were just his technique and his wildness was really, really big influence on me, especially when I was in college. And so yeah, I was just like, whenever I find my way to Spain, I want to just beeline to Matty Clark Wayne's house. That's the vision. And so when we ended up in Catechese for this workshop, after the workshop was done, Carrie, Roman, Jay Garcia, and we ended up in Barcelona. And through a mutual connection, we ended up getting this opportunity to do this big mural in this restaurant called Organic. And so we did this huge mural. It said Organic, and we each took a few letters each and did them in our own style. And So one day I was in there by myself, and it's this huge restaurant, so many seats all the way to the back, and I was just sitting in the back corner taking a break from painting, drawing in my sketchbook, and this woman comes in and just comes directly to me, and she's like, wow, you're interesting. What's your story? What are you all about?
Yeah.
I was like, I'm an artist. I'm working on the mural. I was here for this workshop with Robert Venosa. She's like, oh, you must know my husband then, Matty Klarwein.
Oh.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Of all the places and all the people, you're coming right to me. And he had actually passed away a month or so before.
Whoa.
And so this was the karma that I've had, is like, just before meeting some of my, my most beloved, inspiring artists, they like pass away right before I get the chance to meet them. It's happened multiple times now, so I don't know what that's about. But yeah, so I ended up meeting her, and so she came in the following day. She was like, I told her how much of a fan and what my intention was to meet Matty, and she's, oh, well, I'll bring in all his out-of-print books, and here's a bunch of his original paintings, and here's his kids, and I got to meet the family, so
wow,
that was
that's
really
so
auspicious.
Special.
Yeah.
Matty's my number one. When people ask me who's your favorite artist, and there's so many artists that I love.
I can see that for sure.
But Matty's like, wow, he had it all.
Yeah.
There's just a level of detail. That Aleph Sanctuarium that he made.
The Aleph Sanctuary, the grain of sand, the
grain of
painting.
sand, where he
So
repainted the painting into the middle, but miniature, and it was already a crazy painting. Are you crazy? What the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That kind of inspired. That's one of the main inspirations for me to like not sell my main paintings, my main originals.
That's what I'm working on now. My intention is to reacquire some of my my most important works. There's a few pieces out there that were so important to me and so infused with so much symbol-rich meaning and intention, and traveling to multiple countries while I'm working them and having all this input of all those places put into it, and then selling it to someone that's just like, yeah, cool, matches my sofa. And I'm
that's a thing. That's a thing.
It makes such a difference when those works are going to people that really resonate, really feel it, and really give this feedback of what their experience is of it that is synonymous with my own personal experience. That means so much to me, and I'm just like, yes, that's so great that this is going to this location. And then, but it also just take into account some pieces are, medicinal, and the medicine needs to be where it needs to be to have whatever effect it's going to have. But there are a few pieces out there that were really special, and I really want to have them back for an intention to create my own kind of Aleph Sanctuary or Cosm, and creating an equivalent through my unique aesthetic lens.
That's what I'm doing with this house. This will be my Aleph Sanctuary. My dream is that for the rest of my life, I'll pay my mortgage like a good boy, and at one point I'll own it 100%.
You're gonna cover the entire outside?
And that's in discussions with my partner. She thinks that the ridges on the house are too complicated for somebody to do actual painting murals, and I'm like, a good painter could work with that.
Yeah.
We'll see. For now, it's purple, but I do want to cover the whole house with my main paintings and then gift it to the city of St. Pete. And you can consider the Chris Dyer house as a little dessert or appetizer before you go to Dali or after. And it's just
fitting.
a vibe. Yeah, the stairs that go up and then they go down, that could work well.
Yeah, it's just like the Vatican. You've got that whole staircase through the Vatican.
Well, I don't know if we can compare this to the Vatican, but just a little offering. We exist in the physical world, and I'm like, what am I doing here? What am I leaving for humanity? How am I contributing past Instagram posts and online blah, blah, blah. But anyways, I'm happy to hear you want to buy some of your main pieces back.
I don't know how far down the line that's going to be, before that comes to
a lot of people
to fruition.
These days.
But this is the intention, to create a space, create some, be able to build it from the ground up would be phenomenal.
What I do these days, I give a letter to the clients that I sell the painting, being like, you got my art now. Thank you for buying it. But if you don't want it, I'm number one. And also, I got this dream of a museum for when I die. So if you're going to die and your kids don't care about it, can you please donate it to the whatever museum that I want to create? And so at least they have the understanding of let's maybe.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to have a lot of work sold to people that I'm still relatively close to. So there have been opportunities to call it back for, solo exhibitions and have the originals on display, because there's a lot of work that ends up getting sold before it's even finished, and so there isn't even an opportunity for the public to see this completed work, and the prints don't quite live up to it in the way that I would want, and so it's nice to be able to show it off and actually show people that it is actually painted and it's not a computer-generated image.
Totally. Before I get into mediums and stuff, I gotta plug my beautiful sponsors, Yak Snacks. Yak Snacks are a delicious microdose of psilocybin mushrooms. It's a 1/4 gram each one that I take at the beginning of each show. So give thanks and praises. Would you like one? Are you good?
I'm good for now, thanks.
Yeah, cool. Paulina? All right, great. They put me in a good mood. They're amazing. I appreciate how they carry this humble, visionary art and psychedelic culture program to share more good vibes with the people. Thank you, Yak Snacks. And they are really, truly good. Also, I'd like to thank Labatt Blue. They are sponsoring. No, they're not sponsoring this one. No, Labatt Blue is a Canadian beer. I'm Canadian. Luke's Canadian. Do you know that Luke's Canadian?
I'm Canadian.
Canadian. Ooh, I've never heard that one. That's a good one. I'm going to use it. Are you from Ontario?
I am from Ontario.
Where, London?
Born in London, Ontario. I grew up in Toronto.
Okay.
And then fled to the West Coast for 7 years.
Okay, nice. We're both Ontarioans. I was born in Ottawa. At what age did you leave to the West Coast?
The first time was in 1995. I hitchhiked across Canada. I actually hitchhiked across from Ontario to British Columbia 4 times.
Nice.
Yeah,
1995, you were what, 20?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm old enough to not get in trouble.
Yeah.
Or into a lot of trouble.
I
That's
got
what
in trouble with my parents because I would just drop off the map for months at a time with no cell phones.
Right. How did your parents feel? But your parents were hippies, right?
I wouldn't say hippies, but I mean, they were pretty close to that culture. My father's a musician.
Mm-hmm. What style?
Folk music. His band was very, I guess, a predominant feature at a lot of the folk festivals in North America. And
what was it called?
Friends of Fiddler's Green.
Okay.
And
is it on Spotify? Could I look for it?
Bandcamp, I've seen it on there.
Uh-huh.
I'll send you some links.
What's the name of your dad?
Alistair Brown.
Alistair Brown.
Yeah, so I grew up
Shout-outs.
around a lot of musicians and a lot of artists, and being, taken out of school a lot of long weekends, traveling up and down the East Coast of the United States, a lot of time in New England, Vermont, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, a lot of gigs around there. And my dad was also the director of a music festival, so he's the MC up on stage, and the after parties at the hotel with just top level musicians of all kinds.
This was in London?
The festival that he was director of was in London, yeah.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I was surrounded by a lot of musical, artistic culture. So for me to take this route in life was not a stretch of the imagination, or when this was made clear to me that this was where I was going in life, my parents didn't interfere. They were like, great, what art school do you want to go to? So it's super grateful supportive that I didn't have to encounter that kind of resistance or have to fit into a framework or a box that didn't fit. It was a lot of freedom to take this path. So yeah.
But you started as a tattoo artist, right?
I didn't really start as a tattoo artist, but I started tattooing when I was in art school.
Okay. What art school do you go to?
Ontario College of Art.
Okay.
I first went to an art school called Beale in London, which was really kind of an unprecedented situation by today's standards, because it was like, they had like an automotive section, or this engineering section, but then it also had a college level art program. So I got an opportunity to have access to every possible medium post lunchtime. So before lunch, it was like geography, science, math, etc., all the standard, high school curriculum. But then lunchtime onwards was like filmmaking and ceramics and jewelry and figure drawing and paint, oil painting, illustration. I got to do all these courses
in high school.
In high school.
Wow, that's great.
So then that allowed me to have advanced standing at Ontario College of Art because I had this whole portfolio that just showed them that I didn't have to go through all the basics, which was really cool.
We're lucky that we grew up in a country that college was cheap enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what, $500 a semester to go to college, something like that.
I don't even know. My parents were paying for it.
Yeah, and it probably wasn't big sweat to them neither to support you through that.
Yeah, at that time, you know, there's a lot that I wish I could have replayed with, you know, what level of purpose and direction I have behind my art now, having access to that then. Because there was you know, considering there was tuition paid, and they really just left me alone in the building to just like come in with what I was creating, and they'd be like, great, here's your mark. I'd be like, well, what am I paying you for? This is like expensive rent on a studio.
That's how I felt in university. They were just like, oh, here's some artists you should be inspired of. Here's your homework. Do 4 portraits and a couple still lifes. It's like,
I mean, I think
what the fuck?
I just felt like such an unrelatable alien in that building with so much just narcissistic nihilism and people drowning in their own self-importance that I just didn't really feel like I was a part of anything. I just stuck to myself, and you know, I had my personal psychedelic adventures that I was translating into painting in my studio, and then I'd bring it in and they'd be like, I don't know what to make of that, but it looks great.
So you were already doing psychedelic themed expressions. I remember an old school painting of yours about the Dogon tribe.
Oh, that was in high school.
Okay, nice. Yeah. So that's great. So you what were you listening to, like Coast to Coast AM or something to get that kind of information?
I think that was from it was Graham Hancock.
Graham Hancock, yeah.
Fingerprints of the Gods.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Fingerprints of the Gods.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That was the influence on that one. But yeah, so I ended up when I was in college and I was taking, I did interdisciplinary studies, so I was pretty much all over the building. I didn't specialize in anything because I just wanted to just have my hands into every possible medium. You know, I had my own just personal cathartic creative convulsion that erupted my sense of direction and dharma duty as an artist, and I saw this unique aesthetic lens applied into every possible medium, and so I just wanted to just get into everything and just translate that into whatever it was, from painting to sculpture to, you know, whatever it was. So I was all over the building doing that, and I was doing all this work outside of school, doing a lot of promotion for bands, album covers, gig posters, children's book illustrations. I was making wallpaper designs, doing all this stuff that was then my assignments that I was handing in and getting graded. So, plus getting paid for it outside of school. So that worked out really well. And then, I ended up meeting this really amazing tattoo artist that was in the school, and he suggested that I should meet his teacher and do an apprenticeship. And so I started out doing tattooing.
How many years did you do that?
I mean, it was like on and off, 95 to about 2002, 2003. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, a few sporadic ones here and there since then, but...
If I gave you a tattoo gun right now, you'd be able to do something on my skin.
Yeah.
Because right now, Luke,
I think the last time I tattooed someone was 2016. And I got to use all those the cordless rotary silent machines, which was a total trip. That was it was always the coil machines. It's like switching from a frapping Harley Davidson to a little, you know,
like
Tesla
a scooter. Yeah, you know? Like a scooter.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Do you miss it at all? Was that fucking up your neck or something?
It was causing a lot of repetitive stress that really brought me to a crisis in my life of just having my creativity compromised. That I mean, it was really the ultimate blessing because it really thrust me onto another trajectory that I had been ignoring or putting aside in order to cater my creativity to other people. And having to somehow find ways to take really unimaginative, dull ideas and try to make them cool. But it was such an all-encompassing medium that just took over my life, and was this financial safety net that was always there. I could travel with it. I could show up anywhere. I'd always have work. It'd always be there. And so I was following that trajectory and generally ignoring how it was really messing up my body and getting this repetitive stress in my joints and you know, my
I hear that from a lot of tattooers that
yeah,
they're
it seems
like
to be a common affliction, but yeah, it really hit me hard and just forced me to just rehabilitate myself and my life and like face the first round of Saturn return in the most like brutal way of having my whole sense of identity compromised.
Really? You know? That was at 27 when you were starting to wane off?
Yeah, around that time.
Interesting. I find like tattooing is such a great chance to like get your drawing skills up. It's really like a drawing skill.
Yeah, totally.
And but they're also stylistics, as you said. You gotta grab like boring concepts and turn them into something like really special.
I did have a great opportunity tattooing in Singapore for 6+ months, tattooing mainly U.S. military. At this,
Whoa.
This was in 1999, and
wow.
It was such a massive upgrade on my skill set because it was this famous shop that was known for generations of U.S. military showing up, and these guys are docking with 80 people on each ship with their food and lodging paid for, and they've just got paychecks to blow on partying and getting tattooed, and they just want souvenirs basically, and they want to get some reenactment of what their dad got in the military, you know, a lot of the times. And so showing up there and having all this custom drawing, I was getting more work than I had ever imagined, and being able to just present ideas that were not anything like they were thinking of, and they were just like, absolutely,
yeah,
you know, I want a mermaid. Okay, well, we do a full sleeve and we make a pirate ship falling off the edge of the earth with flocks of birds coming up on the side of your neck, and they'd be like, yeah. So I got to just expand my portfolio instead of getting the runoff in the shops in Canada and the US, where it was just like, here, do this Japanese calligraphy because none of the other guys want to do it, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And now it was like, oh, I get to just, you know, impose all these epic ideas, and they're all into it, and I'm getting the top precedents in the shop. So that was a really big development for me. And then coming back to Canada with now I've got this portfolio of what I'm actually capable of doing. So that was a big deal.
Oh, hi there. How you doing? We interrupt this beautiful, super awesome podcast for me to invite you to imagine this. You and me in the beautiful tropical islands of Hawaii painting together. That is true. It sounds impossible, but this May 21 to 26, I will be in the island of Kauai offering a 4-day art retreat. And my best friend, Dyer, who's offering up her spot up in Chakra. She's an awesome psychic healer. We will be painting, I will be teaching. I encourage you to check out the webpage, omnishakra.com. And yeah, I hope you can make it, because why not? Let's paint in nature, right? All right, blessings.
When would you say, like, you were always a visionary psychedelic, you probably are a interdimensional being that's presently having a human experience, and you're expressing it through your human experience, but when did you embrace...
I would concur with that.
Yeah, well, you know, it takes one to know one.
It's taken a while to adjust to this biocrystalline monkey suit and how it interfaces with the holographic Imaginatrix, but I think I got the hang of it now.
Yeah, no, you're doing great, Luke. You're having a great
Well, these are the benefits of knowing that you're dreaming and that none of this exists other than a projection of consciousness.
We're interacting in a very physical, real, like, I could grab a hammer right now and really hit my knee, and that would be as real as it gets. So it's not like it's a fake reality, but we're aware that we're more than that. That beyond that, there's consciousness that's infinite, eternal, and might as well have fun in the parameters that we're in.
Yeah, I think those parameters are more malleable than we think.
And I think they're becoming even more malleable.
Yeah, I think like you really got to fine-tune your imagination of yourself and what you're believing about what is possible. It will reflect into the hologram in increasingly discernible ways.
I love that, Can you give me an example of how you've not manipulated, because manipulated sounds like evil, but
I think
worked
it's
with
just
the
coming into
parameters?
vibrational congruence with true reality, and yeah, just bypassing all of those internal ego-driven narratives that reinforce non-reality. And where, coming into that condition, that flow state condition, that for me, being an artist is what I'm wholeheartedly devoted to.
Yeah.
I see a byproduct of that condition is a fluidity of reality and a more streamlined, serendipitous synchronization of just optimal reality. And so that brings me back to that self-reflection of what it is I'm imagining about myself, what it is that I'm giving my energy, my power over to, that is either life-affirming or life-resisting.
What's the balance between I'm conscious of my manifestive powers and I manifest in the world, but also like I'm not the only one vibrationally voting. Everybody else is vibrationally voting, creating parameters.
But there's certain votes are bigger than others. I think being more vibrationally congruent with a unity consciousness, that there is ultimately one being here dreaming itself into complexity in order to know itself as every possibility that exists, brings about a more streamlined outcome that's more meritorious, more beneficial, more life-affirming. But I think just in terms of vibratory expression, if you're walking around in that separation consciousness of, just, you're not a participant, you're simply an observer and a reactor and a receiver of reality, then your impact on the collective hologram is less than someone who is taking integrity into account, that, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Understanding that they are
is
you.
a foundation of unity consciousness, that the consideration of the impact of not just your actions, but even your thoughts have, it's like that's part of that vibrational congruence state, that flow state, just being in right action, right speech, right.
Try your best at
right
least.
Mind. Yeah.
Because you can
easier said than done, but there's an aspiration to that. There's a default setting that you can access, and the more you do, the more you train the self to be in that condition.
Yeah.
And when you see the outcome of that condition over and over and over, and you take note of what is it that made that happen instead of this worst case scenario? How did this incredible circumstance that is presenting itself in this deeply personal cosmic wink, cosmic joke variation, how does that keep happening? And I just keep reflecting it back to the imagination of oneself and the participatory interplay state, that it's like the mind is non-local. It's not it's not contained inside the skull. It's a universal subconscious experience that we're all filtering through this radio.
Right. It's a tricky thing. I always have a hard time balancing, because you sit on the other side of reality with whatever medicines resonate more with you, and you try to understand what reality is about and what this monkey suit and video game we're playing, and then I come and it's like, okay, this time I'm going to be good. This time I'm going to be confident. This time I'm going to be all love, and I'll be compassionate at every turn. And then it almost seems like lately, especially this week, at least for me, we're on Good Friday of 2025. We just had an eclipse last weekend, and the astrology just shifted to all planets direct. It almost seems like a looking glass is like pointing at us, and the sun is going through it, and we're getting burned. So it's like, okay,
yeah,
I gained.
Definitely an intense portal. I felt that one.
And I guess my question is, we become more aware, we become more quote unquote wise, and we're like, okay, cool, I think I finally get it. And then all of a sudden this astrological combination happens, and I feel like I'm back at being like, not the worst aspects of myself, but like there's a lot of work to still like be conscious enough to at every turn be love and compassion and goodness. And Yeah, how do you deal with both knowing the true reality of existence, but also being locked in this matrix with all the challenges that come with it?
It's cultivating compassion and acceptance for what is, that it's, I think there's a certain, there's a benefit to adhering to the will of the divine and just being in accordance with it and not reacting, but just being present and considering everything to be a form of merit. That it's all depending on how you're engaging with it and receiving it, and not resisting and fighting against the will of the universe. I'll give you an example of something that happened to me that really drilled it in for me. It really set the stage as this, just the most phenomenal example that has altered my modus operandi ever since. When it was in 96, one of my hitchhiking trips when I used to hitchhike a lot. And so there was a time where I was trying to get from Vancouver to Nelson. And I had all my stuff left in Nelson. I ended up with a road trip out there, and I was like, oh, no problem. Like, all is well, all is super easy for me. I'll get there in time by sunset, no worries. I ended up really having a hard time getting rides. I ended up in this really high elevation in the mountains. It was already getting dark. It was getting really cold, and I wasn't dressed appropriately whatsoever for these conditions. And I was getting really, really scared, really frustrated, feeling like, just so hard on myself that I just put myself in this situation, and I didn't apply any harm reduction for what may or may not happen. And so I was in this place, no one's picking me up. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm way down this mountain road somewhere, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll have to hike down off the road out of the wind and somehow access my non-existent wilderness survival skills to make it to sunrise and not freeze to death, because no one's around, no one's picking me up.
They just dropped you in the middle of nowhere? They didn't give you a place to stay when they're taking you up there?
Well, they dropped me at some place because they had to take another turn that they realized, and they didn't want to drive me all the way back to the town. They were like, I think there's another spot, just hang out
good
here.
Luck, hippie.
Yeah, so I ended up in this situation where I think car's coming, I'd get up to the top and it's already gone, and I'm exerting myself way too much back and forth, and I just need to save my energy to try and survive the night. I'm like, do I dig a hole in the earth and bury myself to stay warm and stay out of the sight of bears and mountain lions? I don't know. I was like in this really tough situation, really just like afraid and frustrated, and this was happening over and over. Hiking up to the hill, car's gone, back down. What do I do? What direction? Just pleading with source intelligence, like, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
How do I survive this? And I had this moment where I just totally surrendered to the situation exactly as it was, and just tuned in as deeply as I had the capacity to tune in. And I just sat against this tree, and there was some part of my conscious awareness that had shifted to just be completely accepting of reality as it is, and to just immerse myself in a place of gratitude for everything my life has shown me, every experience have had the privilege to have, that if this is it, then this is it. Like, no moment's been wasted. And then accessing that, it was like the volume of that experience, of this place of just loving, unconditional loving gratitude for a reality as it is, just went cranked to volume 11. And as I'm in this state and just not wanting to leave this state, not wanting to interrupt or disrupt it, I had some kind of auditory hallucination on the road that was like, oh, a person. So I hiked back up to the road, and just as I got to the road, this truck is pulling around the mountain road, and it's a friend of mine from college in Ontario that I hadn't seen in a couple years. And he sees me in the middle of the woods in the dark wearing a t-shirt, and he's like, what are you doing here? Oh my God. And the next moment is me just like at his friend's place 30 minutes down the road, sitting by a fire in a wool blanket, eating roast chicken and grilled potatoes and drinking whiskey and laughing hysterically. And it was like, this is the circumstance. Yeah, it was like, what made this happen? How did I get that alignment to occur where this person who was a dear friend just crossroaded with me in like the worst case scenario? It was like either you freeze to death and be terrified of bears and mountain lions, or here's the alternate. That's the best case scenario that could ever be. And he ended up driving me to Nelson. All was well.
Nice.
And so I just really saturated in that of like, what created that? Why was that the outcome? Did I just win some cosmic lottery where it's like, luck, bad luck, luck, bad luck? No, it's like the luck was a direct relation to my imagination of self. That was just acceptance and peace and allowance and, you know, just coming into alignment with the will of the divine, just presented this opportunity for the most life-affirming circumstance. And it's played itself out like that in so many variations that I take notes internally.
Yeah, well,
and just experiencing these synchronicities that aren't just like, oh, how interesting, how odd. It's like, no, that was so deeply personal. That the conditions of that were so reflective of my own internal process that outer circumstance is directly related to my inner imagination of self. And I'm so grateful that I've had this opportunity. And it's also by design to live life as an artist and to be minimally accountable to other people's imagination of myself. Has been very purposeful, mainly because of these kinds of experiences that just opened me up to a possibility of the malleability of the hologram, and it's directed me to a lot of different spiritual traditions and lineages of the ascended masters that all talk about the same thing. It's like the language that they had of their time was referencing this, and so there's something to this, you know.
This is super interesting. It seems like seems like a story from when you were younger in your early 20s, and you're already getting coincidence or synchronicity is so hard to be like, hey, wake up, Luke, this is reality, make the most out of it. Do you think like this is because you probably did some work in some past lives and then you're just catching up on this lifetime and carrying on?
I can't corroborate that, but you know, I think that there's a lot of that spoken of in a lot of the spiritual traditions that I've immersed myself in that reference that, you know, I'll put some weight to that. You know, especially coming into this life with just incredible circumstances, incredibly supportive circumstances for, you know, it's just like...
I'm curious about your past lives. We got to get you a good psychic to like look into your database.
I have actually, and it was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, well, I know it's hard
that's like another hour story though.
Yeah, it's hard to share these things. No, it's hard to share your past lives because then it sounds like we're so arrogant. It's like, ooh, I was this and that. And it's like,
it didn't sound like the best circumstances that, you know, but definitely was like vitally important to put me in the path that I'm on with the conditions that I'm experiencing.
To bring you back into the light?
Yeah, and to be of service in some form.
Beautiful.
You know, which I consider my creative channel to be a form of service. You know, I don't really want it to just be a form of, you know, novelty, eye candy, but there's a deeper dharma duty behind it, which
you got something
is the
special
intention
that you share.
And is also reflected a lot to me from people that experience it, from, you know, personal journeys that people have been on that were so profound and so powerful and so impactful, and yet they don't have any capacity to convey the significance of what that was. And for me to present something visually that is identical to what it was they experienced is like seemingly a comforting thing for a lot of people. It was, you know, especially bringing my work to different environments of, you know, the entheogenically inclined.
Totally.
And have them, you know, give me feedback that is completely congruent with the, you know, the deeply personal process that I went through that isn't necessarily spelled out in the work. It's not in the title. It's not in the write-up about it. But I have my own process that brought that out and the intention behind it. And then to have so many people come to me like, this makes me think of this, and this is what I'm experiencing, and this is so much like this dream that I had or this trip that I went on, that you've just mapped it so succinctly that what's going on here? How did you access this? You know, I can't tell you how many times I've encountered variations of that for me just give me this feeling like there's another level of orchestration behind this, that by just succumbing to the flow state condition as a priority, that there's another dimension of intelligence that inserts itself to just guide the process and lead one through to arrive somewhere that is transpersonal. There's like a bigger process to it that seems to be occurring in many people. And so, yeah, that just brings it back to a feeling of just wanting to be really intentional about what I'm doing and not squander it, not like
being cool,
bring any kind of sense of nihilism into it or narcissism into it, but just like what wants to be shown. Show me what wants to be seen. And
so I want to keep on picking the whole history of Luke Brown and everything in it, but like while I'm on this topic,
Hi, we take this little pause from our conversations for me to let you know that I got a brand new art book. This is my second art book, Shamanic Journey, that just came out with Last Gasp Publications. It's a 256-paged book, full color, shiny, beautiful pages with full of my art, writing, stories, basically everything I've done in the last 13 years. And I worked really hard on this book. It took me months to lay out by myself, and obviously the art has been a labor of love of many years, and I've condensed it all in this beautiful book that now is available on positcreations.net. You can get a signed version, you can get an unsigned version for a little bit cheaper. And yeah, this won't run out of electricity. On this digital world where we gotta charge everything, or a solar flare could knock out the electricity of the world and you'd be like, whoa, where did all my Chris Dyer go? No, this runs on energy forever. You never gotta charge it, you never gotta water it. It'll always be there to give you new inspiration and art. And I've done this with a lot of love, you know, and I hope that you will get a copy for your own personal library. And reflect yourself in it and make your own book and story of your life. But here's mine, and I hope you will enjoy it. positcreations.net. Thank you.
What are you painting, man? It seems like when we do psychedelics, different psychedelics open different possibilities. Like say, like if you were to do like ayahuasca, it takes you to this place. That's the one that I'm more familiar with. But like once upon a time, somebody injected some ketamine into me, and that took me.
I hope it was consensual.
It was, but they didn't tell me what it was. But that's a different story. But it took me to another place that didn't have visions, but it had different feelings. And then I've done other things like Bufo that once again don't have visuals, but have a feeling.
The Bufo didn't have visuals?
No, I disappeared. It all turned
that was
white.
The most predominant part of it for me.
Really? I don't even remember.
My internal visionary experience is my most predominant sense, I think. So for me, the getting introduced to the psychedelic experience was so vividly visionary, you know. But that was always my internal quality. This just like blasted it open. And you know, reading books is like watching a movie for me. I can just see everything that's being described, or someone's telling me a story. I'm like getting the holographic viewing monitor on the back of the eyelids is acting it out.
It's almost like people who can see colors from sounds.
Yeah, synesthesia.
Synesthesia, but you got it with like reading stuff. You can like your mind.
It's just
can
like my
visualize
dreams are just so multi-sensory, so much visual content, so much ability to retain. That's always been there for me. So when I had this initial psychedelic experience, it was like vividly visible
Yeah, I'm not like that. I'm like not visual. I can get visions. Actually, DMT and ayahuasca brought more visions to my experience because before that it was just feeling. And Bufo just knocked me out invisible. It got rid of Chris. There wasn't a Chris to observe anything. So when I came back, I was like, what the fuck happened? And like, I'm very confused and I couldn't sleep for days. And it kind of like shook me to my core of like, it took me too far. So I guess my question to that is like, we do different psychedelics. Are we going to the same place, or is it one place with different floors, or is it totally different dimensions with different entities in each one? What do we say about these psychedelic investigations and what you're bringing back, and what dimension are you painting?
Ultimately, it is all one consciousness expressing itself diversely. Right. You know, there is no otherness. It's all one dream, one experience, one mind, one heart, one singularity, one dream of God experiencing itself. But that expresses itself in different vibratory ranges and different dimensions, the different levels of intelligence, different levels of malevolence or benevolence, but it's all consciousness. It's all dream stuff. And I mean, for me, ayahuasca was my most ultimate art instructor. I mean, I've been a psychedelic enthusiast for most of my life, and initially I felt this compulsion to convey what it was that I was seeing in order to share with others that weren't experiencing it in the same way. Like when I was in high school with a bunch of friends, and they're like, yeah, the curtains are kind of moving, or extra colors. I was like, yeah, let me try and show you what I'm seeing. And I would just fill up a sketchbook with a bunch of drawings to be like, check this out. And but yeah,
would you say you got any psychic powers at all? Like, say, on your sober life, do you have extrasensory powers, or did they only come in psychedelics?
I mean, I feel like I'm altered forever from those experiences. They were so psychically expansive and really brought this sense of imperative importance to just really paying attention internally, externally, like to not just be a bumbling sleepwalker, but just like really take into account what's occurring internally and externally. And I think that's really benefited me. I also, once I was brought into these opportunities to have much more intentional containers, these frameworks for psychedelic exploration, like with the plant entheogens, with psilocybin and really high volumes and what that has the capacity to reveal, it made it much more apparent that there's a dimension of sentience, a sentient intelligence that's interactive and has something to say, that is operating on a much higher vantage point than my little 3D peripheral vision, you know, limited self, that there's something else, but not necessarily that it is something other than the self. It's just like a higher bandwidth of perception, but has a sentience to it that can be interacted with. And so I would receive a lot of downloads and upgrades and ways of just like fine-tuning this 3D experience through just paying attention to what it has to say and how to move through blockages and blind spots and areas that can manifest as, you know, just distortions physically or mentally, that there's ways to just like zero in on it and undo it, you know, reconcile, find peace with what needs to find peace with.
Out all the insects.
Yeah, find peace as a bumblebee hits my ear.
Yeah, so there's lots of pollinators here, so lots of bees, but they won't sting you.
No, that's great. I love bees.
So it's all one consciousness, and you're exploring it. Where does Luke sit in all of that? Like when you come back from that places, do you feel detached from this video game avatar reality where you're like, this ain't shit?
No, I feel so much more immersed in it, and the gratitude that I get this opportunity for this tactile, sense-driven vehicle. This is where it's at. This is where the fun is. But yeah, some of these initial experiences with ayahuasca in particular was really quite incredible for guiding me through a process of how to more accurately convey the formula, like the psychedelic formula that is relatable. And I don't always know what these visions mean at the time, or like what they're alluding to.
How to put names to it, huh?
Yeah, sometimes there's just something that's just, it's bringing my attention to it, and it keeps reiterating it in some variation and like this feeling of like, hey, check it out, look at this, don't follow that thread of thought over there, that's not for you, check this out. And you're like, oh, wow, what is this? What are you showing me? And then having these dialogues of visually based interaction. So it's not like sentences are being formulated and being returned with sentences and with grammar, and it's like
so that's
it's like a visual thought is responded with a visual thought, and so something is being shown that's really just a phenomenal visual effect that's just really beautiful and just something that I've never seen before. And I'm just like, wow, what is that part? Like, what makes that? And then it'll kind of deconstruct itself to show me some kind of underlying skeletal architecture of the shape, so I'm not overwhelmed by the glossolalia that's texture mapped on it. It shows me, it kind of breaks it down more simply. That's like, it's this. But if you take this content and replicate it this way, it makes this kind of effect. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can remember that.
I'm thinking you must have been an engineer of some kind on our planet to be able to break open that, not that anybody else couldn't, but my experience with psychedelic investigations is like, I'm there and I'm so like, whoa, I feel like I got a boot on my chest almost, where she's like, shut the fuck up. I'm gonna fucking like work on you right now. Fuck your homework, fuck your paintings, that's real world stuff.
That's not to say I haven't had that experience. I'm very familiar with that. But I think that there's also an outcome to the reconciliation of those experiences where it's like, okay, you don't need to go through that anymore. You've worked that out. Now you're free to get over here now and
go and roam.
Yeah. But yeah, I've had some real just like perilous experiences in the abyss,
So
but
it's hard to
there's
put
been
words
such
to
a
it.
positive outcome that it's made me less resistant to, just like, oh no, what if it's gonna be bad, because like I've had some, seemingly bad ones that have just benefited me so much that I'm like, all right, what is it? I have more of a peaceful acceptance of whatever.
Like a bad trip? Or a difficult journey, or
just sometimes it's like arduous. It's like, this isn't just like super happy fun playtime. This is like
lots of activity today.
Yeah,
it's the astrology, I'm telling you.
I'm just like having to dig up some shadowy domains of unprocessed psychic material that I didn't expect to have to dig up. But
is this your own mathematical equation that you're resolving, or is it part of the human mathematical equation that you've been giving this part of the fraction for you to resolve?
It's both, like as long as I'm not taking it too personally, that this is just a process in the human experience that just needs to be ironed out, and I'm getting a slice of it to iron it out. I'm going through a slice of the collective initiatory process has
what do you think happens?
Relatable personal components to it, but ultimately it's part of just the transformative process of humanity, and so to just run with that.
I can imagine these things that we're painting. I imagine what you're painting, what I'm painting, are different dimensions or different rooms in a dimension or different areas. Do you think we all go to the same place when we die, or do we all go to these dimensions that we're more fitting from? Like, what do you think happens when we die? since you've done so much investigation of the place outside of reality, if we can call it that?
I mean, I like to consider some of the experiences that I've had to be like death simulators, a dry run for the big event, and it was a very comforting place. You know, the less adherence that I had to being afraid of losing identity made it reveal itself to be a very comforting place. And yeah, I just really took the impact out of the death experience, but it also emphasizes how cool it is to be here with this tactile sense experience and to just do as much as possible that is of merit to the world and to be to be uplifting and beneficial to the collective life experience. That's really what it's about. It's not about personal acquirement and gain and boosting yourself up. It's like, how can I make this the coolest experience for everyone around me, and to be a cosmic cheerleader for others' experience. Like that's the reward. That's so
beautiful.
You know, that's what I've come back
That's our
with.
quote for the trailer. But no, that's so beautiful. I love hearing that, Luke. I really love hearing your
that
intentions
experience of just location and identity and personal self merging with collective self in an effortless dissolution of boundaryless eternity, where there is no beginning, no ending, no boundary, no parameter, and is omnilocatable as an illusory hologram of separateness in order to reflect to itself difference in order to reveal itself. And having that opportunity for the malignant egophrenia narrative grip of wanting to take control of the experience and wanting to just take ownership of it and narrate it to itself, that I am a singular entity that is the doer of action. I'm in control. The opportunity for that to loosen its grip and see that it's all just interaction and all based on relationship to itself, that there is no singular doer of action. It is all a singular mind.
Yeah.
And to get that firsthand present felt experience is life altering. There's no regressing after that. To have that as a reference point in one's experience, that even in the density of this illusion can not point at that, but somewhere deep inside it's like there's been an alteration at the most foundational level that just can't go back to normality. It can't just go back to a state of separation consciousness. There's a consideration that has to happen always of what you're influencing around you, and that influence should really be positively oriented for upliftment. And that's really like, that's the karma, that's the upliftment, that's the advancement on the board game. And
this alteration
and the way out of the game, basically.
This alteration, do you think it happens in the mind, whatever the mind is, the heart, the body complex?
It's a heart-mind coherence state, where they're not at odds, they're not running independently, but they are synchronized in their coordination.
Yeah,
it's really where it all happens, and that's the flow state for me, and that's the incredible opportunity that I've had as an artist that has brought that to the ultimate priority list. That's really where the matrix busting perception really occurs, because and that doesn't just happen in my creative process. It happens in just living creatively and just bringing the attention to that, how that functions. And that can happen in so many ways. And this is where all of these lineages of, master teachers have all been pointing at this in this form. And like this is on the priority list of where attention needs to be, in the breath, in the moment, in the now, in this state of compassion and forgiveness, and all of these principles that are, and service. It's like there's a reason why all these things are like so emphasized, because it's like, how do we get out of the swirling eddy that's looping around on the side of the river of eternity and get back into the current and pull the entire eddy with it, so that we're collectively back in the unity consciousness again, and then the whole vibratory signature of the earth experience and the human experience just gets bumped up a notch on the radio signal, and it all happens all at once.
It seems like reality is a mix between the control of your reality and the surrender to whatever happens. And
I think, just having that, just bringing the attention to letting go of being the doer of action. Because I think that there is a certain level of genius that just presents itself as a natural byproduct of that divine will. And then it's fun, and it's you get to play with.
There's a little snake slithering down there. I was like, what is that? There's like a snake going down there. Don't worry, they won't bite. Yeah. But you strike me as a person, and I wanted to ask you this because of in 2018, I was in Australia. And I remember you were there for a Rainbow Serpent, and you were telling me you were doing the alphabet of drugs. You see it there? It's so cute.
Where is he?
That black snake. Eraser?
Oh, there. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was blending in with the.
Yeah, it looks like a watering.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Nice. What a omen.
What's your symbology of the snake to you?
I mean, there's a lot of different archetypal meanings,
But you were talking about ayahuasca, and we can say ayahuasca's connected with the snakes and stuff.
Yeah.
But I can't even remember what I just asked you.
You were talking about Rainbow Serpent?
Yeah, we're in Australia, and I remember we hanging out, and you were telling me you were doing the alphabet of psychedelics, and I'm like, oh my God, Luke Brown does. No?
No, I don't.
Okay, I remember like we were in a park. Randall Roberts had done art in a park. We had just finished Rainbow Serpent. Ben Lopez, the tattooer, was there, and you're like. Great. I'm doing all the psychedelics in alphabetical order or something, or maybe
I'm sure
I heard
I was just
wrong.
joking about that.
And I was like, whoa, Luke Brown is like the king of psychedelics. He like just does it all, and like I can barely do a little bits here and there, and so like my question about that is like, do you do a lot of psychedelics, or is that just my illusion? And if you do it, really. Is it beneficial, or is it unbalancing, or is it both?
Well, I've had such radically altering experiences at such a foundational level that I feel like it's just altered me forever. Like I don't necessarily feel like creatively, I don't feel like it's a necessity or, a requirement of any kind. I mean, occasionally I like to have experiences that just, it can just feel like a little tune-up. But yeah, it hasn't been as much of a gravitation in my life. I just feel like, ultimately with all these psychedelic experiences, it's all about the integration and whatever is revealed is like, how do you become that? It's like, how do you take all that is learned in that experience and have it be your just mode of operations? And so that's been a big emphasis from those experiences where it's like, you don't need to keep coming back here. Like you've got the notes.
Yeah.
Apply the notes.
I told you the information. Go and run along with it. That's great. I'm happy to hear that. So have you calmed down a lot in how much you partake, or?
Yeah, I would say so.
I think it comes with age. Like we just get a little bit more comfortable in the vibration that we're finding.
Yeah.
and make the most out of it.
Yeah, and I have experiences where there are certain qualities of vision that just insert themselves, and I just receive it and I see it very clearly. I mean, that's a visionary art experience where it's like I didn't go through a whole process of ironing out a bunch of concepts until I get to it. Sometimes it's just, it all comes in one shot, and it's like, wow, that's epic. I have to do that. I don't know why, but and then there's a process that starts, and then it's like, oh, I realize what the meaning of this is, and sometimes there's a whole series of synchronicities that start to play into the process that reveal more of the meaning, and it's like, oh, that's why that came to me in that way. So it's just, I have this kind of internal, that internal holographic viewing monitor sometimes just locks into a channel, and it just, I get it all in one shot, and it's like, that's important. I need to really prioritize that.
Sometimes we can have like an intention that gives birth to a painting. Sometimes we just gotta paint whatever the fuck we're painting and find what the meaning of it all is.
Yeah, and I've had so many cool experiences of just the revelatory magic of, just some kind of creative compulsion that's just, I think it's just like some cool visual, I don't know why, and then through a series of events, I end up meeting some people who then just explain to me the meaning of it, that I was like, oh, that's totally it. And that's so relatable and so deeply personal, and I had to go through a series of events that led me to this person that filled in the blanks, that like, and then there's like some other deeper details of the timing and the astrology or the numerology of the dates or something, might come into play.
Or the colors you use match the colors of the chakras or something like that.
Like, so that painting that I painted in Vienna. So I was guiding the two students through a whole process to get them to their finished works that they were going to commit to for the final 3 weeks, and I wasn't putting the attention on myself of what I was going to work on for them. And so the Sunday night into the Monday morning, when everybody had to show up with their finished sketch they were going to commit to the canvas, I had this vivid dream that was so intense, where I had this whole image, and the first order of business was just to roll over to the sketchbook that was in the bed and just sketch it as quickly as I could to retain everything that I saw. So I had this vision of seeing this mountain erupting and splitting open, and like this other being born out of the top, and all of this molten lava pouring down the side of this mountain. And initially I was really scared in the dream of like, oh shit. But then this being was like pointing at its heart, and it was like this very calm look on its face, like, have no fear, and so then the lava was pouring around and creating this kind of island shape that I was sitting on, and so
creating reality.
Yeah, so I did this work, and then weeks into the process, I find out that the volcano's erupting in Bali and that the flights are canceled, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what this is about. I'm gonna commit to making this a very distinctly Balinese painting. So what can I do here? And so I started looking through, I put this wisp of smoke on the Naga serpent's head and turned it into a Balinese om, just as an homage to Bali. And then I was going through Pinterest and Google Images trying to find a reference to a Brahmin priest in full regalia, just the right angle, the right kind of lighting. Literally went through hundreds of photos, found this one shot that was like, oh, that's perfect. I'll put that guy there in this like island with the lava flowing around. And so I ended up back in Bali, after that whole experience, and I met some Balinese friends who were in this Brahmin lineage, and their fathers and grandfathers are Brahmin priests that do the full ceremonies and the full regalia, and so they just basically explained all the components of this painting and how it relates to Agong, the volcano, and just matter-of-factly gave all the Balinese names to all the parts and how they relate, none of which I consciously brought into, it was just a dream. But this was some kind of psychic premonition of the volcano erupting and a psychic attunement to Bali, and it was like inserted itself into the dream for me to access so vividly enough that I could retain it and feel this emotional charge behind it. I'm like, I have to do this. And then they told me that of all the pictures that I had chosen, I found a picture of this man named Menku Parahu, who was the guardian of the temple of Agong, and he does these offerings to the Naga spirit that lives in the volcano, which I also painted in the painting, and that basically if something were to happen to him, some eruption just like engulfed him in volcanic ash and he dies, then that's what he's committed to as the role of that Brahmin priest. So he just happened to be the guy that I found just because I thought it was a perfect angle and a perfect outfit he had on. And I was like, that's the guy.
Good intuition.
So it just happened to be that guy. And then, you know, they're describing all these components, that there's the being that's birthed every time the volcano erupts, a new guardian. And so I had this new being with an 8-fold lotus at the top of her head, which they described that it had an 8 direct. So they basically just like gave me the full rundown of this painting and how significant it was, but none of which I was interpreting. I didn't do any research into any of that. That just all came through a dream transmission and was affirmed by my relation to Bali.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that was really special. So
while you're in Austria.
yeah.
Yeah, that was trippy because you were teaching the same semester as me and I came after, and like I'm imagining your story and I know exactly the room you came up with that because I spent 5 weeks there very depressed. That's the room I did most of my spiritual work when doing that painting you saw up there. And how do you like Austria, Vienna? Because I didn't really love it. Like I love Lauren, I love the Visionary Art Academy, but totally. It was very depressing to me.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I was trying to have as much fun as I could there, but yeah, it was a very distinct level of rigidity of thought, and that was so, I'm not accustomed to being in a culture like that just does not deviate from the protocol. Like it just felt really like uptight and rigid, and just finding myself getting in trouble for just like being a joking free spirit, you know?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Wow, you must be really not enjoying your life if you're upset at my happiness. I don't know what's going on here.
With all these psychedelic investigations, did it end up with you having a particular spiritual path, or is it just like general where all spiritual paths are congruent to you depending on the moment?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately that, but there's the different lineages that I feel a really deep affinity for and a familiarity for, and the Vajrayana Buddhist tradition is something that I was initially attracted to it because of the way that it's expressed creatively, the tradition of the Thangka paintings that on the onset of my visionary awakening was just like so attracted to it. It was like, wow, these are just so psychedelic, and
they paint so well with the little brushes and stuff.
Yeah, and but then being like, well, why are they painting these figures this way, and what's the name of them, and what do they mean, and what are they holding, and what's the meaning of that, and why is he also holding that object? And just kind of brought me into learning about that, and just finding myself just feeling like I must have come from an incarnation of having been a part of that before, and
feels like it to me,
and having many experiences in the Himalayas. Just I'd had these continual, for multiple consecutive years, going on long motorcycle trips through the Himalayas and going to these remote areas where some of that Vajrayana culture is still intact, and just having such a deep vibratory, like atomic level memory of those places in a way that I didn't quite take fully into account that I would experience in that way. I was always like, I'm like totally relate to that, but then being there and being in that culture and being in witnessing those traditions and rituals and paintings, and just like, oh, I know this, I've been here before. And so that's been something that's been really helpful on my spiritual path. And also just grateful that I lived a life with an upbringing without an adherence to, like religious upbringing of any kind that I had to undo conditioning related to. So allows me to just dabble in and just find the parts that are really resonant, and that I have the right to drop things that aren't, they're just like, oh, that's not it. Like, that doesn't relate. It's not relatable. But this part is like super highly calibrating on the truth scale. I can integrate that, you know.
Beautiful. And I know you got a big connection to Pale Horse, our artist friend that lives here in St. Pete. He's quite, I don't know if they call it Hindu. I know he loves...
he's definitely immersed in the Vedic traditions.
Yeah.
Which I also have a deep love for and affinity for.
Right. You guys
very
resonate in that.
Yeah.
What aspects of that very expansive tradition with so many deities and stuff, what attracts you to it, and where do you interlock with Chris the most?
Chris I think ultimately that it's not so much like dogmatic adherence, but it's like philosophy, you know, philosophical, and also just like being able to kind of discern and differentiate qualities of consciousness through anthropomorphic means. So the way that it's portrayed is this whole pantheon of characters and this whole, you know, kind of theater play of all of these, you know,
energy is personified.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily, you know, a being on the other side of the veil that's puppeteering this dimension, but it's more like just these dimensions and domains of how consciousness expresses itself that we give this anthropomorphic feature to in order to relate to it as a quality. But ultimately, it's all one consciousness, one God,
At the end of the day,
being,
it's all one.
But it's like you just separate the rainbow refraction out of the light, but it's all light.
Yeah.
It's just expressing itself in these bandwidths in order to be like, hey, I can like isolate this one quality of light in order to look at the way that light also relates to sound and you know, it's like,
and here's Ganesha
but
Hanuman.
it's like qualities of you know, higher domains of consciousness that
energetical expression.
But not necessarily to say like there is Ganesh with his elephant head is like hanging out somewhere that's not here and he needs to be given offerings, you know, in order to like keep him happy. It's like Ganesh is a vibratory signature that expresses itself, you know, as the removing of obstacles.
Right.
You know, so it's like you've isolated that quality of the removal, like the forward motion of, you know, of obstacle-free, you know, synchronous serendipity is Ganesh.
But then there's also egregores, which we focus so much attention upon, and maybe we created a Ganesha to actually exist from having thousands of people through thousands of years believe that this being exists, and it's like, well, thanks for energizing me into existence. And maybe I've had so many people be like, oh, I saw Ganesha in my psychedelic journey, and be like, whoa, you saw Ganesha? Like the fucking elephant head guy? Like, really? Like I can't believe it, but people tell me, so I gotta believe it.
I've had that interaction for sure.
So I'm like, is it real? And he actually exists on the other side of reality? Did we create him into existence by personifying him?
I love it, but
I cannot say that
the
word.
Balinese culture in particular is their adherence to just the way that their rituals are enacted as a form of a microcosmic theater production of the macrocosm. And so by considering themselves inseparable from the totality of creation, they're personally enacting ceremonial actions that are symbolic of cosmic actions. And so it's like they are acting out a form of unity consciousness that by them enacting out this ritual or this ceremony, they're simultaneous with that action that's occurring on the grandest scale of existence.
It's almost like assigning a color to a feeling in a painting.
Sure.
I'm gonna add more yellow because I want it to be a little bit happier, and that's Ganesha. Or that's Shiva with the blues, or something like that, right? How was it?
I appreciate that an entire culture that just takes that into consideration, that this is a multidimensional theater production that's happening on every level of dimension all the way to source, and it's like, you know, just funneling down through densities until we're here. But it's like as above, so below. So what happens below we are acting out the above. You know, it's like I can really appreciate that, and I'm glad that they're the ones doing it so that I don't have to, because it sure takes up a lot of time.
It sure is. Feel so lucky to be in this.
Yeah, and now I've got so much free time to paint. I don't have to do these weekly rituals and daily rituals because they've got it covered. I can just stick to what my role is here, but I can really appreciate that, and I get it.
Hi, we take a little break from our super awesome podcast show so that I, your artist friend Chris Dyer, can tell you about my brand, Positive Creations, which I have been doing for 20 years. And with this project, I share my art through different products, maybe beautiful clothes that you can use in normal life or in the festival world, or skateboards that you can ride, or games like puzzles, or kendamas and flow toys, or use slip mats for your records. Basically a lot of functional things that just add fun and magic into your existence. So I hope you like it. Check out positivecreations.net. positivecreations.net. That was not a glitch. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon. Blessings.
So let me take you back to Asia. You lived in Asia for decades. I remember when we first started connecting, I don't know if you were already in Canada. We started connecting like, I'm thinking like 2004 when I got out of school and I started realizing there's a visionary art scene on Arrowid.com.
Oh yeah, I wonder if my stuff's still on there.
Oh no, if there's an Arrowid.com, maybe our artist on, I think I'm the Arrowid.com Artist of the Month, June 2204. But that's where I found your art and I was like, oh, there's other artists painting trippy interdimensional shit. I was just doing it on skateboards in Montreal and you were in the West Coast, or maybe you were in Bali at the time.
By 2004, yeah, I went to Bali for I went to Bali for the first time in 1999, but 2004 was when it was really obvious that this was a place I needed to be spending my time.
No, it's so beautiful. And I remember I traveled Asia in 2005 and you're like, Chris, come out here and hang out with me and my friends. We're doing a music video at this temple and somehow it doesn't align, but like, tell me about that era, because that whole leather feather, like, you know, Burning Man, hippie and Bali was a whole scene, you know?
Yeah, at that time I was asked to come and be a part of this collective production that was intended to be a kind of group showcase for all of these talents, that all the talents had a part to play, that could all be promoted equally. And so it's a pretty lofty ambition, so it had some
Who was
big intentions.
The head of that direction?
I don't know about the head, but you know, it was the whole cast of characters. And so I was asked to contribute all kinds of concept art for this video. So they wanted me to do costume design, set design, props, paint, backdrops, anything, you know, artistically inclined that would contribute to it. And so when I first arrived there and realized that I had the opportunity not only to skip out on Canadian winter, but I got to work with just master tailors, jewelers, carvers, painters, sculptors that were enthusiastic about being able to outsource my visions and work alongside them to get things exactly as I wanted them, was a no-brainer. It was like, obviously this is like where I need to be in order to, and this was coming out of that time of, you know, quitting tattooing and having to really rehabilitate myself with my own artwork. And yeah, so yeah, there's so many side tangents I could take off of this, but
well, it's a whole time in history. Once again, like I bring the leather feather not to like point it out as like, oh, that's a weird thing, but that was like almost like a whole crew of hippies that existed at that time that I don't see that much anymore, but it was part of our history. I found myself
particularly challenged by a certain expression of that because it, you know, especially there was some predominant characters in that really just too immersed in their own self-importance, you know, being the main character of their lives and all trying to compete for being the main character that I just really didn't relate to. And I've never really been a group player, you know, I was very solitary. I didn't play group sports. I skateboarded. It was like, not reliant on other people's schedules. And growing up, it was like me in my own little bubble, doing my own little thing. Like,
I'm stoked to learn that you got this whole skateboard art influence in your art.
oh yeah, it was huge for sure. I can wholeheartedly relate to your enthusiasm for it, or that it's still with you is super cool, because that was a big one for me, and just being like replicating it at the time, like not necessarily,
that was
doing my own thing, but just like, how can I copy this Caballero skateboard as accurately as possible?
BCJ, Jim Phillips.
Yeah, so part of that Bali trip was really dramatic for me, because it was part of my rehabilitation as an artist, and where my life was really destined to go, and to be able to move out of the scarcity mindset of not necessarily feeling like I could follow through with everything that came through my head, that I was very limited in my capacity in my creative output. So once I arrived there, it was like, wow, you mean I can just like work with teams of people to manifest this stuff, and it's like exactly as I envision it? Of course I need to be doing this.
I know.
And just kept coming back year after year until it was pretty much my home base. And and that's really what kept me there, was the availability, and just the long-term relationships with just master carvers and jewelers and tailors, and just really whittling it down to like the top people that I could really work with. And
so there's where you connected with like people who are good wood carvers, where you could be like, this is what I want you to do, and create this.
But I also really wanted to be a part of that process. Like any of those mediums were, very rarely just like, here's the project, I'll be back in a week. It's like, let's work on this together. I want to carve this wood with you. And, we can like, I have a lot of fractal repetition, so I can just get something just right and be like, okay, can you carry on with that and like make it just like this and to there, and then I'll come back and I'll work on the next
Living there, you had more time to sit with them and really guide them.
I'd have these cycles through, and I was also, I'd have these migration patterns in the year where, I'd be in Bali for 3-4 months. These were the amount of projects I'm going to work on leading up to Boom and Portugal, and then I'd come back, or lead up to Burning Man, come back, lead up to Rainbow Serpent, come back, lead up to do something in the UK, come back, lead up, so I'd have this like insularness and extrovertedness. I'd like kind of deepen my process, and then I'd bring it out to the world, and I would spend my days just cycling around to all these different mediums. And so like in the afternoon into the evening, I'm working with my wood carvers, and then the next morning I'm hanging out with tailors and leather workers, and then the next day I'm doing some jewelry, and just so I had access to all these things, and it really just like boosted my confidence in what I have the capacity to express, which was really incredible for me.
Empowering.
It's so empowering to be able to just have that visionary experience, and be driven by the enthusiasm of like, yes, that's awesome.
And
I have to do
Bali's
that.
got such master creators. It's almost like a plug-in to your imagination. It's like, let's take it to the next level.
Yeah.
How many years did you live in Bali?
I was there for 15 years.
15 years. I find Bali has very powerful yet fiery kind of entities that can either burn you or empower you. Did you encounter
that's a really
them?
like discernible phenomena there. I
Tell me about it, because it's fascinating to me.
I think it's just like a culture that has such an adherence to the direct interaction and the interplay with cosmic forces and magic, and all the esoteric actions of their rituals. I think just creates a kind of the thinning of the veils.
Yeah, it's a vibe.
Yeah, where like you really have to be like, especially if you're going to be based there, you're going to be having this kind of interaction with a different level of cosmic coordinates. And
it's kind of like
it's going to bring up a lot of stuff. It's going to really make you have to be on the tightrope walk with what it is.
Right, it's like a Hawaii thing with the volcanic, like, yo,
yeah,
like you gotta be on, or we're gonna crush you.
And I've just witnessed so many variations of the most dramatic experiences of being wholeheartedly embraced and just provided just phenomenal, thriving reality,
Right.
or just the most like brutal circumstances of being absolutely ejected and never coming back, you know, and like seeing it in those forms so many times, or just like you really got to be on the straight and narrow with what your intentions are in the world and how you're interacting. And,
yeah, we're not here to fuck around or we'll fucking like stomp you as a
but after
beer
15
can.
years, there was a lot of elements that were really, you know, heartbreaking, hard to overlook. The level of corruption and rampant development, unchecked, you know, just overt corruption that just makes infrastructure hard to maintain. And just seeing a direction that if it isn't addressed is suicidal to the culture. And so
because it seems Bali is so popular these days, like, you know, you've moved on, but Bali is Bali now, you know, as Tulum's Tulum and etc.
It's just this feeling like I don't know if I can really be another contributor to this experience, and I don't know what I can do to change any of this. It's so beyond my means.
Well, obviously not because of deficiency on your artistic powers, but like maybe you were just not resonant with it anymore, or what was the issue? Like what's the deal with Bali?
Like for me, it was like the density and the traffic and the pollution and all of these things were just like, I can't sustain my presence here and be a contributor to this. And
it changed.
Yeah, just the rate of change was so telescopic in the leaps of change that
this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah, from like 15 years prior to just like, wow, just thinking of the good old days, you know, that no longer existed there in the same way. And so, yeah, I had this feeling like I'm going to want to make some kind of radical direction shift here. You know, I don't know what it's going to look like. Maybe I need to reintegrate back into the West somehow. And so the plan was to move to Ibiza. And so I had met this man that offered me his house for a year. Beautiful 5-bedroom finca. It was like an amazing circumstance. And so paid the rent on it for a year. And I was in a Rainbow Serpent in Australia, and this was the beginning of 2020, and just seeing the lead up of what was coming and just feeling really uneasy of how Australia was going to handle it. It was like, time to get out of here quickly.
Yeah.
Even though nobody's talking about what it is, I have the feeling is going to happen here.
You did good.
Yeah, so it was like, well, the house isn't ready in Ibiza yet, so I'll just do a stopover in Koh Phangan on the way. Just spend a couple weeks there until the house is available. And then upon the first week of arriving, like days later, the border closed, the world shuts down. I'm in this remote bay and boat access only, and 10 people remaining in these 3 bays. And it was like, all right, this is happening now. This is the circumstance. And
you spent COVID in Koh Phangan.
Yeah.
The north part of the island?
Initially on the east side, like the sanctuary,
where things are not like full moon party style.
No, a little bit further up the coastline.
Yeah.
Much more remote.
Bottle Beach? No, Bottle Beach is like a private beach.
Hajuan.
Yeah. Anyways, I've done Koh Phangan in different ways. I've done the fucking full moon party, got my camera stolen, as they told me.
Yeah, it was the most optimal circumstance I could have ever imagined for that time of just not having any of the collective neurosis, psychosis being applicable there. It was just like we were just exempt from it
we're
for a long
not playing
time.
This whole COVID lockdown
and then
situation.
Just looking at Ibiza with like 5 people, you know, 1 person per household is allowed to go to the supermarket between this hour, and it needs to be 5 kilometers from your front door. Like full like lockdown was just like, wow. I just, you know, narrowly averted that introduction to living in Spain was like the worst case scenario. And instead it was like, and not only that, but also making contact with just absolutely angelic beings that were really a new level of benevolent benefactor that were just like, we love what you do, we support what you do, here's everything you need, go for it, we trust what you're gonna do. You know, at a time when uncertainty was the main event all over the planet, and here I've landed in this totally remote bay where nobody is living, and I'm meeting these people that are just like supporting me wholeheartedly. It's like, wow, this is some incredible circumstance. I inverted that one and ended up on this one. Like this timeline
you went
instead
from
of that
Bali to
timeline.
Copañan. That's two of the, and Ibiza is another one of the, islands of pleasure and party and Western hippies going out and enjoying. But we can't generalize it. But there's different beaches and pockets where you could just be in a hut in front of a beach and it doesn't really matter what area else is
so that
doing.
time was a really incredible opportunity for just deep spiritual dojo training, because it was like, this could be the world now. This is where it all the ship sinks, and this is where where I'm riding it out to the end, was this. And so it just freed me up to just be really like deep in a sunrise hour-long breathwork practice, and just all these disciplines that I just wanted to really dive deep into, because now I've got the time for it. There's nothing to work on the horizon some point down the line. My year is not packed up with flights around the world. There's no windows of production leading up to anything. It's just like, this could be it now. And it was actually a fantasy that I've been holding on to for a long time.
Dude,
of like,
I
what would it
still
look
dream
like?
about the next fucking
What would it look like if I was
that.
in a place doing one thing for a long time? What would that even look like? Where would it be on the planet? And it was like, here it is.
Yeah.
Here's the circumstance. And
you're forced to chill now for like half a year or a year or 2 years.
Yeah, it was great.
Just do your art.
It was so beneficial, and brought my attention back to my painting in a way that I really needed. That wasn't just like spreading myself all over the place with
Bali
all
was
these
probably...
mediums for that I'm only taken to whatever depth and direction. And so to just have painting and just be able to take the time to finely tune it with the smallest brushes, with the magnifying glasses, and just, and being able to offer it to these people that were supporting me for full price on the work, was an incredible opportunity. Yeah, it was so special.
It seems like 2020 and the years that came after were both a blessing at the end of the day, and we realize it in the...
Yeah, I think it really upgraded a lot of people and upgraded people's discernment, and really like took the veil off a lot of people's eyes.
Right, it woke up a lot of people, but it also was a crushing moment, both for good and for bad. Wherever part of your development you're at,
I saw such radical divergence of people that were just going deep down the rabbit holes of neurosis and fear, and others that were just absolutely thriving and everything's working out for them. I was seeing those examples of what is it about the personalities that are moving in those directions? Like, take note of that, How are these people just like absolutely, thriving in their business and their abundance and their spiritual development and their love life, and everything is just erupting, and these people are just going deeper into the grip of illusion. It was like, for me, it just was so divergent. It was like, okay, I'm not going in that direction. No way.
So did 2020 and years coming did not humble you at all, where you're like, oh fuck, I gotta get my shit together about this or that? Like, did that not happen to you at all? Because it seems like we all went through it at some degree in those years.
I mean, I was really just forced to surrender on a level that just, I had the imagination for, but wasn't necessarily applied in the same way, where it was just like, okay, I absolutely surrender to this.
Yeah. Could I imagine that you didn't get the DXC?
No.
Yeah.
No, I was vehemently opposed. That got me in all kinds of trouble with family and friends for just stating what I considered to be the obvious. That I'd really hoped that somewhere down the line there would be some level of circling back around for some level of reconciliation or acknowledgement, but
it's been
I'm not
5
expecting
years,
that anymore.
And no, I still have not heard one person who judged me so hard those years to be like,
hey,
Chris,
I
respect now where you were at, and it's all good.
Yeah.
Oh well, I don't need it. It's fine, but it'd be cool.
Well,
like,
it was a big process also of just
Yeah.
like allowing everyone to be where they're at and whatever level of their consciousness is bringing them, and that I don't have to impose my will upon another.
No,
Like
you do
there's a
you.
certain level of soul covenant taking place in this dimension that, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
who am I to impose my will upon another? You know, I can be a
No,
living
yeah.
example, and I can share if there's receptivity to what it is I have to share, but if there's not, I don't have to hit people upside the head.
No, you're the owner of your
Because
reality.
if I tried, it just gets reciprocated back with such vitriolic, unhinged venom that I'm just like, now I'm in this loop of energetic exertion that is not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
So why did I even start?
Right. And that seems to be the case in everything these days. It's like, oh, are you
Yeah,
like,
so
do
that
you
was- that
hate
was a
this guy
good-
or do you love him? Or do
Yeah,
you
that was
not
some good muscle flexing of just like allow people to be where they're at and what, you know? Just
It
like
was an
like
interesting
choices have been made collectively.
Yeah.
I'm making my choice of what you know, timeline I'm choosing to be on.
Yeah, this
and
is
it
what I
feels
want to do.
correct.
Just leave me alone. You do
might
you.
be radically different for someone else, and that might be correct. I'm not going to be like, hey, I'm more correct than you, and you need to adhere to what I believe about reality. It was a real big, you know, muscle to flex, you know, especially with that, you know, that particular subject, because, you know, I care deeply for friends and family, and just wanting to bring just considerations to the table.
Right.
And, you know, then having that coming back on me as if I am an uncaring psychopath.
No, oh,
It's
not at
like,
all. Like you
wow.
got good intentions. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
like, can I just not? Can I dip out here from this situation and not even choose? The not choosing was a choosing,
Yeah.
and that divided us all.
Mhm.
And now we're 5 years later, and I wish we could observe it and be like, okay, what lessons did we learn?
Yeah.
Can we like now apply those lessons to the
Can we
new
apply
things
humility
being
that maybe you were wrong now that all the info is part of the public arena now?
Yeah, and can
Is
we
that
use
something we can
this?
learn?
Can we use this to the new challenges coming in our way? Because
Yeah.
we're always
Are you
being
gonna
asked to
get
choose.
hoodwinked
Are you?
again?
Yeah.
Did you pass through the initiation with flying colors the first time, or do you have to?
You gotta go
Do it
through that
again.
like 3 or more more times. Like enough of that. So you lived in Thailand for how long?
5 years.
5 years you lived in Thailand.
Yeah.
In Koh Phangan. That sounds gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, it's a gorgeous place, but you know, it's such a predominant culture of just transient, aimless partying that's just not what I'm a part of or have an attention span for.
Not anymore at that point in your life.
Yeah, and so it was like such minimal.
Because you're already in your early 40s by then. There's like, nah, like, okay. Engaging with lots of ladies is not what I'm up to anymore. Like,
Yeah.
there's more to life than that.
Yeah, so there's maybe just like I could count on one hand the collective amount of people that really just like inspired me, or driven and have their act together and are just doing epic stuff. The rest just felt like, you know, I'm not really
Ego
relating to
points
this.
and making
like,
the
what-
scene and all
yeah,
that shit.
it's that novelty is long worn off. So
Yeah.
just feeling.
I love that. I love that, Luke.
But,
Like,
you know,
when I
but
saw
it was also a place where I really grew a lot and advanced in my own spiritual progression. But it also felt like I'm just a little too far away from the things I want to be connected to. And the amount of times that I've had to fly back and forth, mainly over to this side of the planet for events, and be in the air for 24 hours, barely enough time to get over jet lag before I got to go back, was like, what am I doing? I'd much rather be on this side and have a base that I can orbit from, that, you know, be part of, you know, just inspiring, driven, motivated culture. That's what I want.
And now you live in, what's your base now?
It's still working that out.
Yeah.
Everything's in storage in Thailand. I'm gonna have to.
You're nomadic.
Yeah.
How does that
and so,
feel?
yeah, we were just in Costa Rica for 3 months and looking at properties and feeling out that lifestyle, feeling what it would be like to have a base there, and that's a top contender.
Yeah.
And and
To hang out close to Kerry Thompson?
not close to where he's at, but we did visit him, which was super cool. and he's had that place since 2001. So he's deeply integrated, and it was super cool to just see him in his domain. And he's been a core ally in my life for
I love
two plus
Carrie,
decades.
and I miss Carrie, and I miss Carrie being a painter too.
I know, but yeah, he was saying
painter.
how challenging it is to fight off the mold patrol that's really like interfered with his enthusiasm for painting. The amount of, I mean, Costa Rica can be pretty merciless with invaders of different species, and
you talking about
mold, insects, all kinds of things that you just have to be absolutely vigilant about unless you're going to create a hermetically sealed, air-conditioned domain.
Well, like here, I guess, like we got humidity here too. Yeah, that's so interesting. So you got a foot in Boulder too, right?
That's the other contender, yeah.
Yeah, tell me about your new romance in Boulder.
Yeah, that's been a wonderful, expansive, heart-opening development in the last year, over a year now. And yeah, my partner Amber is based there, and yeah, so a really incredible opportunity to integrate there. Feels great. And
because Boulder is Colorado, and Colorado seems to be like the new epicenter of visionary art. The culture that you and fellow people created together 2 decades ago.
Yeah, it was super cool to see how many people are anchored there, and so many artists that I had associated with the West Coast, all being based there. So that was really inspiring. And yeah, she's a DJ and plays some really fun gigs there, and yeah, just so many cool musicians and artists all orbiting there. Just is really inspiring to me, and I would love to try it out. And also just the motivation to be as close to her as possible, and whatever that looks like, wherever that is. And yeah, so that really is probably the main motivator for being here.
Let's go back to visionary art history, because I like when the show goes into visionary art history. Please tell me, Luke Brown, how was it when the visionary art scene was only 10 people back in the early 2000s, and there was not that many parties or festivals or events, and where were these events where it's only like 5 to 10 people doing this weird, spiritual, trippy, psychedelic art? And how did it feel then? Like, how was it back then?
For me, it all kind of escalated really quickly. When I was in my rehabilitation process and dropping tattooing and feeling like I had no choice but to just devote my attention to painting and making art, and using Photoshop as a tool to accurately convey the...
Because you were doing collages before, right?
Well, yeah, prior to getting introduced to Photoshop, I was taking... And this was
I find that fascinating.
Psychedelic transmission was like going through all my old work, all these paintings from college, taking them to Kinko's, photocopying them in different sizes, and then mirroring them and taking those in different sizes, cutting them out and making these kind of like analog Photoshop.
So you're doing what you're doing with Photoshop, but on fucking Kinko's. I love that shit.
So it started out like that. So then once I was introduced to Photoshop, I was like, oh, I can just take all this stuff, put it on the flatbed scanner, and now I'm creating work that's so much more accurate and authentic to what that experience is. And by doing this body of work in that medium, I was invited to Boom Festival in 2002, and Alex Gray was the only other artist that was invited. So it was just the two of us. And just by association with him, all of these avenues opened up of just recognition and being included in these group shows with Alex, with Venosa, with H.R. Giger, with Maddie Klarwein, all these characters. I'm now like amongst their ranks suddenly, and that was just
crazy.
Just like absolutely, such a phenomenal, encouraging, empowering upgrade to my sense of purpose. Just all of a sudden happened just through this initial
part of a community.
Yeah, through this association with Alex Gray and being promoted in an overtly psychedelic culture such as Boom, was like, all of a sudden, you know, I'm invited out to all these places and I'm being interviewed for these magazines and I'm on these, you know, all of a sudden I'm like included amongst them, just happened just like that.
Like art superstar.
Yeah, so that was really, really an incredible thing for me and really motivated me to just devote myself fully to this process. And then that got me connected with Roman and Carrie and getting invited to Venosa's workshop. And so it all happened like within a span of like 2 years, where all of a sudden I was part of this visionary art culture.
What year is this?
This was like 2002 to 2004.
Mm-hmm.
I had actually met Roman at the base of the Space Needle with his sketchbook, I think in 2000 maybe.
Randomly?
Yeah. And just like seeing what he was drawing.
Tell me about it, please, because I love Roman.
I think it was 420, something 420 related. So yeah, just seeing him, and
he was just there drawing.
Just drawing.
And you're like, what are you doing, you dreadlock hippie? And by then we were all dreadlock hippies.
I was included, yeah. So yeah, and so that got me connected to the interdimensional art show, and yeah, that whole scene in Seattle, and then through
Tribe 13,
Tribe
represent.
13. Yeah, so that it all kind of started there.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, it was interesting, just like being thrust into this collective, and just
who else was in that collective? Just to shout out some old school people who people might not even know about.
David Heskin.
Alora Reaver. Seattle people, Eric Nez.
Yeah.
Obviously, Robert Venosa and
Martina
Alex Ray
Hoffman.
Martina Hoffman were the elders.
Yeah.
But then there was like 5 or 6 newer generation people. Savvy.
Yeah, and being introduced to all of them was just so encouraging, because
you're like, there's others.
There's more.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that's accessing whatever it is I'm accessing and expressing, because, you know, I mean, there's Venosa, there was Alex Gray, but they're very different in what it is they were.
Right.
They were, you know, their skill level was on
well,
another.
Alex Gray's more like it seems to fit more with the new age yoga
and
stuff,
anatomical precision,
right,
and adherence to,
and Venosa was more
very liquidy, very fluid, very translucent.
It's a whole dimension of its own.
Yeah.
Venosa.
Which I don't really see anyone else doing since.
Nobody really carried it on.
Yeah. But yeah, what I learned from him was an amazing leap in my abilities that I didn't realize that's what was missing, because there's been variations of that along the way where I've just challenged myself with a really long way around to get to something, and then learning some hack that's just like makes it so much more efficient that I just didn't realize that that's what I needed to do.
What was the hack that Venosa taught you?
Well, that pareidolia effect.
Pareidolia.
You know,
so
to be able to just create chaos and just make discernible imagery out of organic chaos, which is ultimately the psychological term pareidolia refers to,
but it's
which is
also
such
like
a recurring visual phenomena in the entheogenic space that just repeats itself over and over, that once I figured out how to achieve that much more efficiently, it became something that just kept reoccurring in so many different forms from there, that just kind of accelerated my efficiency.
So, through this pareidolia, face recognition in the madness, mixed with, I think it's called decalcomania.
I think that refers to just pattern recognition.
Pattern recognition is like make a chaos mountain, and in there, like you can find
and also just like
of
any action, any splatter, any way of applying paint to canvas can become a discernible object in space.
You just got to keep on
there's a way
molding
to
like
render
clay.
With light and shadow and translucency, and ways to just take whatever that chaos or splatter is into something unique and just hyper rendered occupying space. So that was really, really encouraging and empowering. There's ways to approach a painting that there's less adherence to having to come up with a concept. It's got to be this cool thing. It's got to be something they're going to love. It's got to be something that's going to sell. All these interferences in your own flow state can just be bypassed by just allowing something to occur and just see what happens.
It's almost like as an artist,
and with the right techniques, more often than not, it'll be successful, no matter how you start.
It's almost like as an artist, you are becoming the psychedelic that will take randomness and will crystallize it into something recognizable in a way.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a recognizable subject, but just by giving the attention to the rendering makes it, just unique and interesting and engaging.
Yeah.
And so, just having that in the toolbox to apply into the creative process just allows you to just break out of the structure or being too fixated on what the outcome's going to be. And by letting go of the fixation on the outcome makes it generally a more successful work. But there can also be some fixation of subject, that you can bring into that. Yeah. But just by having that in the toolbox just allows an opportunity for that flow state condition to be present. And that's where I've really, there's so much spiritual implications in that process for me.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So as somebody who was there in the early 2000s, where there was only a handful of people who were doing this quote unquote visionary, spiritual, psychedelic art, and then, time passed and more people were found, like say I came in, I think, into the visionary art scene in 2008 as a Montreal, Canada skateboard artist, muralist that was like, oh, you do trippy art too, like come and hang out with us. And then all of a sudden we're in 2025 where there's like hundreds to thousands of visionary artists doing their own expression of reality or imitations of expressions that already existed before.
I think there's a lot of that too.
Yeah,
right? I think the visionary term is not always as applicable. It's kind of a pretty broad stroke at this point.
What's your opinion about visionary art in general and the current state of visionary art?
Well, I adhere to the visionary term. I just feel that the experience that I've had in my life and just the emphasized predominance of that internal visionary experience, like how vivid that is as a sense for me, and the way that the transmissions from wherever or what direction or what vibratory dimensional expression it comes from inserts itself into that internal vision experience. Has always been a main source for me. It's not conceptual. It's not going through.
You're not visionary because somebody put a label on you. You're just
it's not
visioning.
Like I'm going through a kind of trial and error conceptual construction that then has to find a way to be visualized. It's visual first, and then
you're just
the
following.
concept reveals itself. So for me, it's like I consider that visionary, where it's just like the completed image is already seen, and then I have to find the ways to break down the sequence of events to arrive at how to achieve it.
Do you have like a super memory or something?
It's like a photographic memory.
That sounds like a super memory to me, because my memory is shit memory. So I'm there and I'm like, oh, this is amazing, but I'm not gonna capture shit. And I come back down, it's like, okay, draw. I don't know what to draw after all of that. Like, how do I draw energy? How do I draw feelings?
Sometimes the experience is really infused with an emotional component. There's an emotional engagement with what it is that I'm experiencing. It really, I feel a deeper meaning. I feel a deeper communion with something that has my best interest in mind. And so that's something that, yeah, my creativity orbits from there. You know, my art is not an expression of doom or despair or nihilism or depression. Like, I don't create from that place. I create from a place of exuberance and joy and enthusiasm for the opportunity to be alive in a physical body. Like that condition motivates me to create.
So your art comes
as a
from
way
a
to
feeling.
just honor this feeling.
So your art comes from a feeling, but also is partnered by a good memory of what visions you had on the other side.
Yeah, because sometimes that vision is like, wow, I really feel that. Like it's like
you think
so
the vision comes
deeply
from the
rooted
feeling?
in my heart. Like I can really receive that and feel that, and that's part of the retention and the memory. Is like there's like a sensation in the body that's related to it. So that's kind of hard to explain.
It's
but
hard
it's like,
to separate feeling with vision sometimes, because the vision comes with feeling, and sometimes you just get the feeling but not the vision, or sometimes you get the vision, but how do you capture that on a painting when it's like 3D reality into infinity?
Yeah. And there's certain visions that just feel really important, and I try to really just like retain it as best as possible and try and recreate it as authentically as possible. But then there's also opportunities for new ideas to come in, and you know, depends on the level of emotional engagement and the receiving of the vision. That's just like, oh, this is a duty, this is an assignment that needs to be followed through, and I need to be authentic to the recreation of it.
Yeah, you got to
other times it's just like, wow, that's
aside.
so cool. Let's see where that goes. And then it's like, oh, it's going this way now. Like, cool, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know.
There's some that for funsies and you follow a trail. There's other ones like, okay, yeah, I surrender and I will do what you say.
So I have different approaches to the work. There's some that is so, you know, it's got that surgical precision and the symmetry, and one of these hacks that I've been integrating in the last years that I'm like giving away my secrets here, but the way
probably no is hearing by this point.
The way I used to do it
past
before.
2 hours.
The way I used to do it
if there
before.
is hearing, thank you.
Figuring out how to build up layers of patterns on top of each other. I've been integrating more laser cut stencils, but using them as a guideline to where I'm going to paint with the brush. So using the airbrush to just kind of make a mark of where I then paint. And so I can develop these kind of vibratory patterns, almost like moire patterns, or these kind of vibrating lines and textures and patterns that are translucently stacked. Gets that Photoshop effect. And so it's given me this opportunity to but I used to take it in this way where it's almost like if you want to paint plaid, you don't just do it pixel by pixel. You know, you'll make a bunch of lines this way and you make a bunch of lines that way. You know, that's an easier, more efficient way than trying to paint little square by square. I mean, that's what Alison Gray does. She does it quite successfully, but that level would just do my head in at this point. So
what's your relationship with digital art to your painted art? And then I'm going to ask you about AI, but let's start with that.
Well, the Photoshop medium was such an incredible catalyst for being able to manifest creative experiments that would have taken a much longer duration to arrive at that. It just compressed it into such a shorter time that it was very empowering to be able to convey that visionary experience more authentically and accurately. But for me, the painting has so much more like it calibrates at a higher level vibrationally.
It's got a warmth.
And I
of
love
reality.
the process of painting too. It's such a deep, entrancing flow state opportunity that I've been less inclined to complete a Photoshop image and then put out a digital print than just working out compositional processes that then become the reference for a part of a painting. Mm-hmm. And so I'm less inclined to follow it to the nth degree, which is really fun, but then it just ends up as a file in my computer that a lot of people don't see. Mm-hmm. But I can work stuff out that is, just a lot easier to just... And also working on a painting and then being like, what does that need? What if I did this entirely different thing that's superimposed on top of it? I can risk-free do it in Photoshop to see if it's going to look good, and then use that as my reference back to the painting. So that's more of what I've been doing in the
Would you
last
consider
years.
yourself a digital artist in any level of your expression?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I'll get my hands into whatever medium is best suited.
Yeah.
But, I have such a passion for painting now, and a level that just I maybe didn't give myself the patience for in the past.
As a guy who does digital art, even as a base to then take into painterly stuff, how do you feel about AI art, where you could just be like, yo, AI, make me this crazy thing that it would take me like months to paint?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
where
not sure what
does
to
it
think
feel
about
like it's like you've gone too far with technology and you lost your humanity? Or what, is there like a middle line or a balance? Like, I'm dealing it with myself. Like my homie here, the previous guest on the podcast, Anchorball, he's really into AI, and I had him here yesterday, and he taught me like, okay, this is Midjourney, and this is the animator, and this is a thing, and I can see how it can grab my art and take it in some directions, but like, is that even my art anymore? I don't know. Like, how do you feel about it all? Like, now that we got so much power.
Initially, I was feeling pretty disheartened about it. Mm-hmm. Basically seeing, I used to do so much work for, album covers or for event posters, festival posters, all these kinds of things where, I'd go through such a, deep, cathartic, process to arrive at something that really represents it, and getting properly paid for that. To see those things basically just like pumped out with this keywords, that whole industry being like obsolete.
Yeah.
And
we
also,
don't need you,
and also
your
seeing all of
spiritual process anymore. Now we can
also
just
seeing these people promote themselves as artists and putting out work that looks so synonymous with everything that I've been doing for the last 30 years, that has such a deep, prolonged process. I mean, some of my paintings are like 3 to 6 to 9 months to complete, and it's like such a deep journey to arrive there, and then to be presented to a culture with such a short attention span now that's just like next, and then seeing like that speeding up even more, where there's just not even an engagement with it, where it's just like the novelty doesn't land. A lot of that was like, oh, but then feeling like, I have such a passion for the process. It's an uncontrollable compulsion. I'm going to want to do that regardless of where this all goes or what that looks like, because this is a spiritual practice ultimately, and I'm engaged in that, and I'm in communion with divinity through that practice.
Yeah, this is for me
that's not
and my
change.
expression,
And I think that I think they will come back around to a deeper appreciation for that analog process. That this is like, I think just kinesiologically it calibrates on a higher level of expression that the human body picks up on. If you're seeing an original oil painting in a museum compared to some AI on Instagram, it doesn't even compare.
Right.
And so
do you think we're going to go into like a few years where AI has its way with reality and just really expresses things we could never express, and then we're going to be like, let's go back to basics and
I think the
to
novelty,
where the art comes out of the heart, and there's a struggle to get the 8 months to create that painting, and we'll value it.
I think on a certain level, it's just people won't engage with it in the same way, because it's just like, yep, next, whatever, AI, blah, blah, blah. Like the feeling of like, wow, that's incredible.
Somebody came
look
up with
what this
that within
person,
their mind.
Yeah.
And with no technological tools, they made this thing for me. And how do I deal with it?
I've had a resistance to bringing it into my process, just because I want to keep going through that process of arriving at that visual phenomena, because that's so magical to me. But I see some really epic applications of it, especially with animation and projection. Like Kerry Thompson did a project at Boom 2023, and he was just, working out another version of it for this year with AI prompts for animated blended sequences that contour map onto the surface of his sculpture. So being able to create the coordinates of all the different shapes, and then the AI just like takes those shapes and just blends it through. Like that is just like so above and beyond.
Right, took it to the next level.
Yeah, I'm like, what a perfect application of that. That's like, where can that go,
Same with Android, who's fully digital art. It's like, okay, like, what's my art to the next level?
But he's also just a masterfully trained classical artist. He's got all the techniques behind him that come from the lineage of the masters that are then translated into those mediums.
Digital art.
And it
like,
shows.
he didn't come out as like somebody like, oh, computer, make my art cool. And like, you got to have a good taste.
Yeah. I mean, I have such an appreciation for artists that have that, all the classical training and all of the considerations of all the lineages of the masters, and then taking all of that technique and everything, and then bringing it to just random abstract expressionism. Like having a background in that and just taking all of that, and it shows, like the Further Collective, with Mars and Oliver Vernon and,
Mars
Damon
One.
Soul, all those guys are just, I mean, their
Damon
level
Soul.
of mastery is so unprecedented, but brought to this place of just chaos and splatter and enthusiasm and, unpredictability, and but then taking that level of just precision and rendering and care, and I love it.
How do you observe the Further Collective and what they've inspired Further? Like, that seems like a whole different branch of the visionary tree. Like, it's a Further Collective branch, and what's sprouted out of that.
It's cool to see what people are doing, but it's very clear that they are the pace car that's way ahead of the racetrack. That that is like uniquely them and like so discernible.
You can't copy that.
No.
Like, you can do versions of that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate it to be so much more open-ended in the possibility.
It's
and
abstract, right?
Yeah, and it's like synesthesia. It's like what music looks like. And that's different for everyone, but I can really appreciate that. And I have some artworks of my own that I've done in the past that,
that are
prior to
subjective.
seeing the Further crew, but that I think are in line with that kind of process.
When I see that process, I'm like, that looks fun.
Oh yeah.
I want to get down with 4 other dudes that are as talented as me, and just fucking throw down on this giant canvas and see what happens over the next 6 days.
And it's so cool watching the way they engage together with it, because it's like watching a band, and like you can't just have a noodling solo the entire time. You have to know your space. You have to know the way that you're interacting with others.
That drum solo is going to come in at any point. You don't know. You got to make some space for it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's that level of just group mind interplay that just has an unspoken level of respect for each person's mastery and trust in what they have to provide, and watching the way that acts itself out non-verbally is really epic. And it's cool that they're doing that in public settings with that level of efficiency where people can see it start to finish. And
it seems like they're on high psychedelics too, and those symbiosis, eclipse scenarios.
I think so, but I don't think they are. I think they're just, as I am, permanently altered.
Ah, gotcha. That's beautiful. Yeah, like, what could you do if you had 5 Luke Browns put together and do a giant 5-day painting to do something crazy. But if anything, you'd be like, well, I don't want 5 Luke Browns. I want 5 non-Luke Browns to take me in different directions that I wouldn't go.
With 5 of me, like the relief to have that much energetic output distribution would be accelerating.
We should make a visionary rock band with Luke Brown, Amanda Sage, me and a couple others do like some crazy
do
collab someday.
Our own version of a further collab with,
right, and be like,
amazing.
This is not subjective. Let's just fucking let paint flow and see what comes from it. It'd be fun, but we're all like...
I had that chance with Nomi, Madonna, and Hans Haverin, and...
Oh, cool. Tell me about it.
It was a big canvas collaborative project for an event in Bali, and we hadn't. I'd worked with Hans before. I'd done some collabs, just like small pieces handed back and forth. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
But yeah, it was a cool synthesis of characters. We did something really epic. It's still there. It's at this resort in Bali.
Yeah, Nomi's great.
Yeah, it's at a place called Blue Lagoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, Luke, we've talked for 2-3 hours by now. Thank you for sitting here.
Fractal time compression strikes again.
Sunny backyard, reflecting.
I don't know if I'm gonna have a sunburn by the end of this, but
yeah, I hope it's not too bad compared to the sun of other beautiful places you are. Would you have some final words of wisdom for artists who are like tuning in to this show, like who are just starting out and be like, oh, I want to be a visionary artist, but the world's crazy and I don't know if I should even be an artist at all? Like,
just be compelled and driven by passion. If that passion is there, if that's something that is just an authentic orientation point in your life, then I feel like you can't go wrong. Mm-hmm. You know, if your motivations are anything different than passion, then it's just not, it's not sustainable. It won't lead you to the lofty levels. There's so many expressions out there that are so niche and so unique, and just whatever your unique aesthetic lens, if you have the passion to express, then success can be there no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
So beautiful, Luke.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming here today, man. I'm so stoked.
Awesome, man.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And thank you guys. Thank you, Paulina, for watching our episode of Chris Dyer's Creative Friends. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that boring shit that you don't want to do, but you love us so much that you want to support the show.
And check out Luke Brown Art.
And check out Luke Brown's art at
LukeBrownArt.com, Luke Brown Art on Instagram.
And make sure to eat plenty of your shrooms thanks to Yak Snacks. We love them. I'm feeling fucking amazing right now. And I'll see you next show. Blessings. Woo! Ciao.
All right.
Beautiful. Oh,
Thanks.
we even had a
Wonder Twin Powers, activate.
Yeah, no, what was that show? Super Friends?
Super Friends.
Yeah.
Form of a rhino. Form of a bucket of water.
Next episode, Hawkso.
Chaos is a pattern. There is an element to my work, not the spray paint. The spray paint, there's a lot, it's all control. And it was always like, can skills in this technique. The other works, you gotta, let it do what it's gonna do and dance with it. And each technique that I investigate, after whatever the 1,000 hours or hundreds of hours of working with it, you start to gain some control over it. Each speaker has a nozzle, a little hose that is connected to the speaker, and that is fed by a pressure tank. Depending on the songs, and it has these other little tweaks and little weird patterns. I could see like weird body figures, and like we're seeing things in it now. That motivated like some of these garden tools, like spraying paint out of garden tools, because I wanted to mount them on the swing stage. And then we're all on the ground hitting buttons, and they're spraying all crazy. I call it like a building printer. So this thing would be like.
So please make sure to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Big thanks, and see you next episode. Peace.